via webinar, which was a great tool to have as well. 22 classes participating in outdoor presentations in the fall, with 386 students receiving WildSafe Ranger kits and becoming WildSafe Rangers. And they also have a take-home activity which discusses attractant management with their families. Feedback was very positive this season regarding the WildSafe Ranger program. Teachers really appreciate our approach. And here's just an example of an elementary school teacher giving her feedback. We were also able to have some display booths. Of course, this was significantly impacted by the reduction in public events. However, we decided to set up trailheads, which is also a popular place for people to start off on their activities of hiking and talk about wildlife safety and carrying bear spray. And there were also the Seashell Farmers and Artisans Market. There was 80 contacts had there. Gibson's Farmers Market, 90 contacts. And then we also had the BC Goes Wild event. BC Goes Wild is a celebration we do every September throughout the province and all our communities. And Erin was able to organize some really fun activities where they were challenged to run faster than a bear, which they learned was very difficult to do. There were also 4 volunteers that helped Erin with that event, and it was very successful. In addition, what we do is also door-to-door education. We modified that slightly. Instead of having conversations in person, we wanted to respect people's concerns, and we did more broadcast of door-to-door hangers with some tailored messages and letters. So 549 people received door hangers this season. Also, people were often out and about, so Erin still had 94 conversations with people. As well, we do bin tagging. So what bin tagging do is we place a removable garbage sticker, yellow sticker, that can also be placed on the organics as well with the new organics rollout. And what we focus on is carts that are put out the night before collection. We know that bears become more active in urban communities, become more nocturnal, seeking food rewards in the evenings and over the night. So we want to prevent bears from accessing carts that are placed out too soon. So these stickers are easy to remove, but they're very bright and they are an education opportunity. And the program is incredibly effective. During 9 outings in the district of Seashell, Langdale, Elphinstone, Roberts Creek, Half Moon Bay, 42 bins received education stickers. But when we repeated those areas, only 2 were repeat offenders that did not really get the education message. So that means 47 people received positive reinforcement. As well, we're very active on social media. We have a provincial WildSafe BC page, Instagram account, and Twitter. And then the local WildSafe BC Sunshine Coast has a WildSafe BC page, and she has over 1,100 followers on that page. As well, we do signage in areas. These are often placed for about a week at a time in higher bear hotspots. This reaches people that may be not active on social media or may not be getting a message. So
we seem to be having a breakup problem.
People that are in the area, let them know that there's bear activity. But we'll even more to that's information. Collaborate with conservation officers, a great partnership as well. We collaborate with BC Parks this season, and
sorry, we can't hear you. We're having an internet problem, clearly. Oh.
We lost her.
We lost her. Okay. Let's give it a minute or two. I'll just. Oh, we're back.
I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
Where did I leave off?
We lost you about half a dozen sentences ago. At the point that you posted stickers at the trailheads.
Okay, perfect. So the signage on the trails, the barren area signs, these ones. Perfect. So I was mentioning that we put them up for about a week at a time, and they're really good for people that aren't active on social media, not be getting some messaging.
Yeah, and we're having problems again. The internet doesn't like your bear signs.
Activity. Collaborate, let us know of Africa.
Yeah.
So I'm going to turn off the video stream for me. Maybe that will help with the bandwidth. So you can't see me, but hopefully you can still see the presentation.
Yes,
Great.
we can still see the presentation. We can hear you. So that's better. Thank you.
Excellent. So what I was mentioning was our collaboration with the COS and how they helped identify area of hotspots that need education, and we're able to support them and focus on those areas around attractant management education, wildlife awareness. We also collaborated with BC Parks this season, and because of COVID, we weren't able to explore that further, but we hope to do so more in the future, especially with the rollout of a new program for WildSafe BC, which is our bear campsite program. So attractants continue to be a source of challenges in many communities throughout the province, and the Sunshine Coast is no exception. So messaging needs to be as consistent as possible throughout the regional district. So WildSafe BC focuses on that, and the introduction of the organics collection it presents an opportunity for that. Also for waste reduction education, and we're happy to partner with the SCRD on that initiative. Fruit and nut trees also continue to be a source of attractants in many communities that draw wildlife into residential areas. Bears were reported this season damaging fences and remaining in people's yards, and even entering homes, which impacts the safety of people's neighborhoods. So some of the solutions that we're able to provide from WildSafe BC is we have a WildSafe business pledge that we're hoping to roll out more rigorously in 2021, which encourages best practices from businesses to become good stewards and examples in their communities and how to coexist with wildlife. To take the pledge is fairly straightforward. A business is just required to follow best practices in solid waste management, provide adequate training to staff, and WildSafe BC can support them in that. And in return, WildSafe BC can provide ongoing support, WildSafe BC materials, and a WildSafe BC business pledge poster. We're also able to help businesses that have commercial dumpsters that want some educational decals put on there to remind people to use them appropriately. We're able to support them in that as well. We also, this is an example of the decals I was mentioning that we are able to customize for different communities. We also encourage businesses to use bear-resistant dumpsters. As you can see, this dumpster on the left is very user-friendly. It's got 2 doors on the top, which make it easier for people to put garbage in and not leave it on the side. It also has a bear bar to keep the dumpster locked, and that also prevents bears from accessing dumpsters. In addition, WildSafe BC is able to support communities in electric fencing workshops. This is a great solution for fruit trees. You can see in this example here, there's a coordinator that's testing an electric fence that's been installed around a fruit tree. These are fairly inexpensive to install, and we would like to see more people use them as a way to prevent bears from accessing fruit trees. Other solutions include outreach around fruit trees in general in terms of picking fruit early, spraying the blossoms off trees for people that aren't consuming the fruit, and just letting them know that bears accessing fruit leads to activities where bears become food conditioned. You can see the bear on the left has been tagged. It's accessing fruit. Once the fruit wanes, then it might start accessing other attractants such as garbage and become a conflict bear. So we want to prevent that from happening. So we support fruit gleaning programs. This is in Alberni Valley. They did a pumpkin collection, and all the pumpkins were then brought to farmers to help feed their livestock. And it was a great way to prevent pumpkins from going to waste. And also sometimes just collecting fruit gleaning programs, working with food banks. WildSafe BC supports and promotes this. This is our bear campsite program that we just introduced in August of 2020, and we're hoping to pilot this in more campgrounds. The idea is basically zero tolerance education for campground users and make sure that they do not have any attractions out when they are in bear country, which is every campground in BC. And we also support communities with posters and signage. So with communities that would like more of an educational approach versus warnings, you can have these posters that are designed that provide safety information. There's lots of icons so that people can interpret the signs whether they speak English or not. It provides resources for further information. Finally, I just want to talk about program funding. WildSafe BC appreciates the ongoing support of the Sunshine Coast Regional District. We've been a partner with Sunshine Coast for many years now. In the past season, the program was 460 hours, which included a budget of $10,000 from NCRD and a carryover from the previous season of around $5,000. However, the WildSafe BC program receives more applications every year than we have funds from the province to distribute to our partners. So we strongly recommend that communities that want a WildSafe BC program budget a minimum amount to support a local program. The way our grant works is that when we see provincial funding, communities apply for a program and they are ranked in a matrix. So if they make progress towards Bear Smart criteria, they get points as they make progress on these different criteria. And then that helps them to have a higher ranking in our matrix and is more likely for them to receive a provincial grant. But we never find out about the provincial grant until the end of March. While meanwhile, everyone's budgeting in January and February for the season, or sometimes earlier, they're doing their budgets in the fall. So again, we encourage communities to take a conservative approach and be prepared to fully self-fund a program if necessary. And that is it for my presentation. On behalf of Erin Heaney and myself, thank you for your ongoing support and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. If you can just unshare the screen, then I can get my participant list back. And do directors have questions? Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for the presentation. I have a lot of questions actually, but I'm interested in the matrix and what this matrix is, and does the regional district fill this in, or is it like, where do we get this matrix from? And so I'll start it at that question. More information about this matrix that entitles the regional district to perhaps a higher grant or ranking.
Absolutely. So this was when we first started the WildSafe BC or Bear Aware program. We had a smaller number of communities and we had sufficient funding to provide programs with a provincial grant and also even offer some seed funding for smaller projects. However, as the program has expanded and grown, our provincial funding has remained flat or has even started to decrease. So the idea is that when we confirm our funding in March, what we do is, in order to be fair, we try to make sure that communities that have a program and that are making some progress on the Bear Smart criteria, that we award them some points based on those Bear Smart criteria. So it's an incentive for long-standing programs to start making some progress, because we strongly support the Bear Smart Community Program. We know it's effective, We know that the implementation of bylaws and incorporating, official community plan language and having a bear hazard assessment and a bear conflict management plan, these are all positive steps that communities can take. It's very challenging for a regional district to do it because you have multiple communities within the regional district that are participating in the program. So it's easier for individual communities to start making progress on Bear Smart criteria. So in terms of the short answer for this season, it's very difficult for a regional district to get points on that to have increased chances of receiving the grant. And again, I want to remind that grant is not secure. We do not know what the grant will be this year with a lot of the funding restrictions from the province and budget constraints and other higher priorities. We are not certain what the grant will look like for next year. So again, we encourage communities to be prepared to self-fund if necessary.
Thank you. Director Santa.
Yeah, just a question is, we have a very active bearware group in Gibson's area and Elphinstone. Are they part of your program?
They're not part of our program, but we're happy to collaborate with other groups that share the same goals and objectives as Wild Safe BC. Absolutely. We're happy to collaborate with any group, fruitling groups, bearware groups, and other groups, and support them in reducing conflict.
Yeah.
Thank you. Director Hiltz, did you have more?
Sure, I'll take another one. This is about WARP, the Wildlife Alert Reporting Program. And how, I'm thinking of Gambier Island in particular, and that there is a wolf pack in the Firkin Plateau, and there is no reports of wolves on Gambier Island. Mm-hmm. And how the reporting and the response for conservation officers or Wild Safe, if there's this lack of documented data of wildlife. So if it seems like the public is under-reporting, because there seems to be a fear, at least I've heard, is that if we report, the animals are going to die. They're going to get shot. So there seems to be a reluctance to report. So I'm just wondering about that, the reluctance to report, not having the data, and how decisions are made.
I can speak on behalf of Wild Safe BC, and I believe Dean is also Sergeant Dean Miller is on in the audience and can respond on behalf of the COS. But what I will say in terms of WARP is, I agree. We strongly recommend, and part of our messaging is for everyone to call sightings of dangerous wildlife, which includes bears, wolves, coyotes, and cougars in urban areas or that are potentially in conflict, to the COS. They can do that by calling it in, but there's also an online form. And also to, remind people that it is very unlikely that the COS will respond just to a sighting. It just helps inform the community and the neighborhood that there is wildlife activity. And Facebook forums work to a certain extent when people are, in that group. But if then information never gets back to people who are not on social media. And some people prefer not to be involved in social media. So the nice thing about the WARP program is that it's widely available to anyone who has an internet connection. And it's updated daily with those reports. And it is an incredible tool that we do encourage people to use and to call in or to use that online form. But maybe Sergeant Miller can respond regarding the COS response specifically for Gambier Island.
Would you like to respond? Aha.
Oh, sorry. All right. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. So, people definitely are. Residents of the Sunshine Coast are underreporting. I mean, there's a lot of public discouraging people from phoning any sort of wildlife conflict to us. And, Yeah, I think Gambier is a little bit different because it is wolves, and there's a a highly transient population there with cabin owners and whatnot. And then I guess there's about 200 permanent residents there. So yeah, people will phone. We have a database I could provide, the RD if they want, with those numbers of how many calls have gone to our call center. But our physical responses have been about three times over for wolf related conflicts, which is a small percentage of the total number of calls. It just shows that we're trying to manage on a very educational basis, kind of using, Bearware and WildSafe platforms to resolve these conflicts. So, and that's no different from the wolf conflicts on Gambier Island. We're trying to have long-term solutions there and educate the public to make changes. So yeah.
Thank you. Director Hiltz.
Yes, so a question for Dean then. So again, so the encouragement of residents to report, because like I've heard quite a bit about the wolves on Gambier Island in the last year. So the warp also serves to inform public that there are animals around to be aware who aren't following social media. So it is still an important tool for people to fill in from cause's point of view.
Yeah, I mean, we don't manage the warp map, but it's obviously connected largely to our own emergency coordination center data that comes in. I don't know if there is a delay in uploading certain types of species conflicts, because it seems like it's very focused on bear and cougar activity. Maybe Vanessa could speak more to that, how the information is uploaded to that. We've done with COVID, and this is a really good platform. And I've been over there in past years to talk to community halls full of locals on Gambier Island, for instance, and educate them on the cougar conflicts that we've had over the years, where cougars have predated on people's pets, and the wolves are no different. It's of course we use our own sort of response matrix based on public safety, and so I mean we get a lot of calls, just people reporting third-hand, second-hand information. So it could be one conflict and we could get 5 reports from 5 different people on it, for instance. And yeah, we have to put that through our own washing machine of response, because we don't have the numbers. And I think that's the best approach anyways, because we're trying to inform the public on how to reduce these conflicts. And of course, pets are a food source and for wildlife. And then, it's just giving people the tools and the knowledge to deal with it. So culturally, a lot of people, I guess, and this could be for our part of the Sunshine Coast, not just for Gambier Island, but a lot of people are just not culturally very aware of how to live in these areas yet. And it speaks to the importance of educational programs, because as our communities continue to grow and become targets for people that come here for recreation and whatnot, they may not have that cultural awareness of how to interact with wildlife. So when they see a dog, one of their pets, get killed, it's they're not very happy. And they just don't understand. So it's a very big deal to them. But you talk to people in Williams Lake, for instance, and that's not such a big deal necessarily.
In terms of the warp data, I just wanted to clarify that data does get updated every day. And it doesn't filter out for any species. It's basically a data dump from the RAP line. and it's filtered out for any private information. The key for the reports that go to the RAP line is to make sure that there is an address that work can georeference. If there's no physical address, that can be a challenge in more rural areas. So that's an important thing. But there should be reports for Gambier. I'll have a look at that. And now you've got my curiosity. I know we also collaborated with the COS on creating a education poster specifically for Gambier on the wolf conflicts that are happening there, and a reminder to residents, not to feed deer, to always, keep an eye on their pets, and never to let your dog out without checking to see what's in the area first. And that's true for not just wolves, but other conflicts. There was recently an attack by a deer that was in rut that injured a dog because someone let their dog out into their yard. So injuries by deer and other animals can also occur. Dogs and wildlife, I'm a dog owner myself, and dogs and wildlife do not mix very well.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to comment that it is frustrating once again to find that regional districts are disadvantaged in these kind of funding criteria. So I don't know if there's an advocacy piece for our board here to think about going forward. I think that we should wrap it up. We've got a long agenda. So thank you very much to WildSafe BC and the Conservation Officer Service for coming to our meeting today.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to move us along to the exciting dam safety results. Okay, that's good. We're going to both do the presentation and receive the report, because of course the report is the report of the presenters on dam safety. So I would like to welcome Vincent Cormier, David Daw, and Babak Rad from WSP Canada Inc. regarding our dams.
Hello, Santa and the elves. It's nice to see you. This is David Daw.
Thank you. I will do a presentation, Chair, and then hand it over to the consultants to take it away. Thanks, Chair, for the opportunity to speak. And today's presentation, is staff report, presents the finding of a project regarding the safety of the 4 dams owned and operated by the SRD. The project included a physical assessment of the structures and the development of several operational and emergency plans. While these dams are regulated under the Dam Safety Regulation of the Water Sustainability Act, both the province and the SRD really, over the last several decades, never paid much attention to the level of compliance of these dams with this regulation. Fortunately, this has never resulted in any safety concerns for the community. The results of this project allow for compliance with the dam safety regulation moving forward and ensure an adequate level of safety for the community. Staff would like now to introduce our lead consultants, Vincent Cormier and David Daw, who will present the findings of the project, and both consultants as well as staff are available to answer any questions the committee might have with respect to the presentation as well as the associated staff report. Thank you. And over to Vincent and David.
Thank you. David, I'll share my screen, maybe. Okay. Okay, perfect. So I should say we also have Babak Rad from our group, also on the line to answer questions if need be. Okay, thank you very much. Well, we'll start right into it then. So I'll just give the I guess the first introductory slides, and then I'm going to hand it over to Vincent. So we're pleased to be able to have done this work for the regional district, and it's been very interesting. and important work, we think. And this is our agenda. So just a quick overview on the regulation that applies here that we have to follow, and the scope of work that we undertook as consultants. A few definitions, and then we'll get into the results of the dam safety review, as noted here, and we'll touch on the emergency preparedness and the operation maintenance side of the review that we performed. So I think we can go to the next slide. So yeah, so I think, and just maybe referred to in the introductory comments there, that we do have a regulation in British Columbia for dam management and dam safety that's been in place for some years. So if you're a dam owner, as you folks are, then you have to comply with these regulations, which is also linked to the Water Sustainability Act. So essentially, you have to what this. The objective obviously is to mitigate loss of life and damage to property and the environment, to keep the public safe in case of and we want to avoid a dam breach. We also want to make sure industry engineering standards are met, and also that dams are properly maintained and inspected. So those are the things that you have to show evidence of to the regulator. And this does apply to small, medium, and large dams. There's a bunch of criteria on that, but essentially the SCRD dams that we looked at, Chapman, Edwards, and McNeil, do fall within the criteria for applicability. So I think we'll go to the next slide. So our scope was to conduct the dam safety reviews, and we had, I'll just maybe mention quickly that for the McNeil site, there had been a previous review, but for Chapman and Edwards, there had not been a formal dam safety review done. So that was good that there's a catch up basically on undertaking those reviews. So as part of that, you have to do a site inspection. You have to put the review engineer, which is basically me, I have to sign off on it and as per the regulation and as per our professional engineering requirements. We have to put our feet on the ground and do an inspection there. So that was, I must say, a fun helicopter ride up to see the sites. So that was the scope there. Then includes the inspection and then analysis of the structure as it sits. Are there things missing, or is it in bad condition, or that kind of thing that we had to look for. And Vincent will get into the details there in a moment. And then also because we had not, I guess there were not formal operation, maintenance, and surveillance manuals for the sites, in generally speaking, then those were required as well. So those are required by the regulation, and they have to be done and updated, as the dam safety reviews have to be done every 7 to 10 years, depending on your consequence classifications. So anyway, so these are all new documents that are related to dam safety, and then the dam emergency plans that were specific to the sites. So those are also required, again, per regulation. And then finally, as a result of the reviews, we found that there were some improvements that could be made. And so we've described what those are. Is there another slide for me, or? definitions. Okay, so I think we kind of touched on that briefly already. So the dam safety review is review and evaluation of all the aspects of the dam, including operation, maintenance, and any systems that relate to the dam safety. And the OMS manual, so that's basically for supporting the safe operation of the dam, and it gives a lot of information for staff to manage the facilities. And the dam emergency plan, that is read in conjunction with your existing emergency preparedness plans, but it does provide specific information related to dam safety. And then the consequence of failure, again, that's a key thing in all this that I think is really important to mention and understand, that depending on your impacts on the downstream of a dam as a result of its failure, you have a certain level of of damage and related consequence, and those are all ranked. It is all defined in the regulation and also in our Canadian Dam Association guidelines. Those are quite well defined, and so we can then pick what category the dam is in based on those consequences of failure, and then that puts you in category for what you have to do and how often for maintenance or surveillance, and how often you have to update your dam safety review reports, and so on and so forth. So these are really important. So this is something that we analyzed in some detail. So, okay, I think to Vincent, over to you.
Yeah, so we don't have much time, so I'll go over it quickly. So we'll start with Chapman and Edwards Dam. They're both located in the Tetrahedron Provincial Park, so just northeast of Seychelles, and pretty high altitude, 1,000 meters, and can only be reached either by a pretty long hike or by a helicopter. So Chapman Dam is a concrete dam, a low head concrete dam, so about 3.7 meters high and 35 meters long. It has a steel walkway and platform on the upstream side, as you can see on the top right. And the platform is used to operate a gate that is used to feed Chapman Creek, especially in summer months, to feed the water treatment plant in order to make sure that there's enough water for the residents of the Sunshine Coast. So it's the main water supply for about 19,000 residents in the area. And during our field inspection, our main observations were that the concrete is generally in good condition, but we did observe some minor freeze-thaw damage on the concrete dam, and also a lot of woody debris on the dam and below the platform. It can be seen on the picture at the bottom right. And the tubes we see there, it's a siphon system, and it's also used to provide water to the water treatment plant in drought or low flow conditions. So the first thing we've done in our analysis is assess the consequence of failure. So what happens if the dam fails? And we classified it as high, mainly because if it fails, well, it's a loss of water supply for the water treatment plant. So it has a pretty big impact on water availability for the residents. Another big impact is a potential impact on a big maple home park, which is a kind of a small residential area located on the left bank to the Chapman Creek. There could also be damage to the Chapman Creek Bridge. We can see the picture on the top right, which is the Highway 101 basically, and it's the only link between Roberts Creek, Gibson to Seychelles. So if the bridge fails, well, there is no connection between those areas. But all those analyses were preliminary. It was high level, and we do recommend to conduct a numerical dam breach analysis to develop flood maps. So we know exactly after the dam fails what is inundated and what could be expected. This information is needed for proper flood emergency plans, and usually those maps that are produced as part of those kind of analysis are included in the dam emergency plan, and they're used for emergency procedures. So in terms of regulation, what does that mean is for a high consequence dam, there is some requirements that apply, and you can see on the table below the requirements for each classification from low to extreme. So at high, we're kind of in the middle. And what it means is that site surveillance is required weekly and formal inspection annually. And the OMS manual and dam emergency plan that we produce as part of the study needs to be reviewed every 10 years. And the dam safety review we've conducted needs to be reassessed as well in 10 years. So for Chapman Dam, the main deficiencies and non-conformances in terms of dam safety were that the dam doesn't meet stability requirements for design ice loads. So since the dam is pretty high up in altitude, there's a pretty thick ice cover that can develop on the lake, and that pushes against the dam. And in Canada, there's some minimum requirements to withstand those kind of forces, and Chapman Dam doesn't meet them, unfortunately. Otherwise, the inspection frequency is not in compliance with the BC dam safety regulation, mainly due to its remoteness, due to the fact that it's hard to access. Also, the vegetation control is overdue, making the dam pretty hard to inspect, so it's hard to see cracks and potential problem at the dam. And also the still walkway and platform that we can see on the bottom right is below the flood elevation, which means that during large flood events, it will be overtopped, which cause obstruction to the dam, and it pushes the platform against the dam, which can destabilize it. And eventually the whole platform could just give up during a flood event, which would be an operational problem too during summer to make sure that the Sunshine Coast residents have access to fresh water. And the last one is that there's no debris boom that prevents the big logs to accumulate on the dam and once again push against it and possibly destabilize it. So what we recommended in terms of structural improvements was to reinforce the dam to address the lack of resistance to the ice load. So it will be rebars that will be drilled in the concrete dam all the way through the bedrock underneath the dam, and that will help stabilize the dam and for sliding forces. And the other big item is to raise the platform above flood level, so we can see on the bottom right, and install a log boom upstream, which is a kind of chain that you put upstream the reservoir, and all the logs accumulate on that instead of accumulating on the dam. There's also some minor improvements like security gate and signage on site, which is a requirement from the BC Dam Safety Regulation, and also install remote surveillance system to have an eye on the dam even during winter months when it's inaccessible. So the total cost, estimated cost of all those work adds up to about $760,000. And one of the big item of the price is the helicopter access, just to bring material and staff to work on the dam. Now, Edwards Dam. So Edwards, if you remember on the map, is located really close to Chapman Dam. It's also in the T-Tradion Provincial Park. It's also a concrete dam. It's quite a bit higher than Chapman. It's 5.45 meters high, but a bit more narrower. At 11.25 meters long. It has a sluiceway with stop logs that you can see on the right, so that the small sluice on the right of the bank. So usually that is used to pass flood event through that sluice instead of overtopping the whole dam, which can damage some instruments. There's also a small steel walkway to walk over the dam crest, and just like Chapman, there's a gate and a remote control system to bring water into Chapman Creek in low flow condition. And generally the dam is in good condition. One of the main observations was there is no permanent lift device to remove the stop logs, which means that there is no easy way to remove the stop logs to make sure that all the flood events will go through the sluice and it won't overtop the whole dam. And we'll also observe some debris in the downstream channel. So just like Chapman dams, we classified it and we ended up with a very high consequences. The reasons are similar to Chapman, but since Edwards is higher, the flood wave that would result in a dam failure would be more important than Chapman, so it can cause more damage to the Big Maple Home Park and to the Chapman Creek Bridge as well. But all this needs to be confirmed through numerical dam breach analysis to see what would be truly impacted. And in terms of regulation, similar requirements apply to a very high dam as a high classification dam. The main difference is the OMS manual and DP that needs to be reviewed every 7 years instead of 10 years. And there's also some difference in terms of design load for the dam. The main deficiencies and non-conformances for Edwards was that there's no permanent lift system to remove the stop log, which means that during a large flood event, the whole dam will be overtopped, and the dam is not designed to be overtopped. There's some instruments on it that could be washed out. There's some erosion that could occur at the abutments. So it's not desirable. Ideally, we want the whole flood event to pass through the sluice way. Inspection frequency is not in compliance, once again, because of the remoteness of the site. The impact of the dam failure in flood condition is still uncertain, and that's why we recommended to do that numerical dam breach analysis, just to confirm that. And there are no safety fences, gates, or signage at site, so there's a hiking trail that goes there, and we want to make sure that the public doesn't have access to the instruments on the dam and the dam itself. And just like Chapman, the still walkway on top of the dam, it's just at the crest. So as soon as the dam is overtopped, the whole dam becomes inaccessible because the still walkway is underwater. And there is also no debris boom, so nothing to prevent the debris to accumulate at the dam. So we recommended to replace the stop block by a sluice gate with a lifting device, which is rendering on the top right. It's basically just a gate that can be lifted up or drawn down, and that's how you control the water level in the dam and what it can go through. And also, we recommended to raise the platform at about 40 centimeters above the crest of the dam, just to make sure that even if the dam is overtopped, it could be still be accessed, and the new sluice gate could be operated in all condition. Also install a debris boom upstream to make sure that there is no big wood log that accumulate and pushes against the dam, and install a security gate and signage on site to prevent public to access the crest of the dam, and also install remote surveillance system, just like Chapman, to make sure that the dam is always surveilled. And if there's something that goes wrong, well, it could be detected in advance. So the total cost of all this is about $633,000, so a bit less expensive than Chapman. And once again, the bulk of the cost is due to the helicopter operations. So we'll finish with McNeil Lake. McNeil Lake is located close to Madeira Park, just south of it. And there's two dams on McNeil Lake. There is the main one, McNeil Lake Dam, and there's also a saddle dam on the south side of the lake. McNeil Lake Dam is also a concrete gravity dam constructed in 1964, and it's been raised afterwards in 1976, probably to increase the water supply for the water treatment plant. It also has a small sluiceway with stop logs below the still walkway that we can kind of see on the bottom right picture, and it's used to pass the flood event and reduce the water level in the lake and the charge on the dam. Also have a low level outlet that is used to draw down the reservoir if the dam needs to be inspected. And it is the primary water source for the South Bender Harbor Water Service Area, which accounts for about 2,300 residents. Our main observation during the site inspection was the concrete is generally in good condition too. The railing on top of the dam is hazardous, so it can pose a safety issue for operators. And there is no stop plug lifting system, which means that the stop plugs are hard to remove, especially if they're already overtopped, which means that the water level in the reservoir would reach higher levels during large flood events, which once again is not desirable. In terms of consequence classification, we recommend a high classification for similar reasons than Chapman. It will also represent a loss of fresh water supply, which would put a lot of stress on the district to make sure that every resident has access to fresh water. It could impact the Aslam Creek culverts, which is the Highway 101. And just like all the Chapman and Edwards Dam, we recommend developing flood maps through numerical modeling to assess accurately what would be the impact of a dam failure. For the Saddle Dam, we classified it as low, was previously classified as high, but we analyzed it and we found out that there would not be major consequences if it fails. So for low consequence classification, you don't have to conduct dam safety review, and you don't have to produce a specific OMS manual and DEP for that structure alone. But nonetheless, we did include the Saddle Dam in the McNeil Lake Dam OMS and DEP manual, just so that there is some information that's documented about the structure. The main deficiencies and non-conformances is the first one is that the McNeil Lake is not contained for large flood events, which means that the lake can spill at other locations than the main dam. I'll show you on a map in the next slides. Also that the stop plugs are difficult to remove or install due to the walkway, which means that prior to a flood event, it will be really hard to remove them, which means that water level could reach higher water levels than needed. And the walkway, just like Chapman and Edwards, is located right on top of the crest of the dam. So during large flood events, it will be overtopped, which means that the dam would not be accessible during flood events to remove the stop plugs or any other operations. Another problem is that at the forest road to access the dam, there's pretty often unauthorized visitors that park in front of the gate. So if there's an emergency and there's people that are parked there and not close by to their vehicles, the dam could be hard to access, which can represent a dam safety issue. So signage should be added at this location. And also the vegetation control is overdue at the Saddle Dam, making it hard to inspect. And finally, the low-level outlet that we can see on the top right is currently sealed, which means that the water level in McNeil Lake cannot be drawn down rapidly. It can only be drawn down through the water intake of the water treatment plant. So if there is anything wrong with the dam, it could be problematic to reduce the water level to make sure that the dam becomes safe again by reducing the charge on it or the force acting on it. The main structural improvement that we recommended was to raise the walkway above flood levels, reinstate the low-level outlet to allow for drawdown of the reservoir, replace the stop plugs and install a lifting device to make it easier to remove the stop plugs prior to flood event to make sure that the water level remains lower, and also install public safety signage and security gates at the site to make sure that the public doesn't access the dam. And one other recommendation was to analyze the impact of the lake overtopping during flood events to see what would be truly impacted. And we can see on the slide here, to make it simple, everything that is red would be overtopped during large flood event, which means that instead of flowing only through the McNeil Lake Dam, which is located on the northwest side, McNeil Lake will spill on the south side too, towards Silver Sands Creek, which means that there will be a watershed transfer. So part of the water from Aslam Creek will flow into Silver Sands Creek and could have impact on downstream infrastructures such as Highway 101, some hiking trails, and possibly some residents as well. And the SCRD's water treatment plant is also located at a overtopping location, which means that it could potentially be flooded too during large flood events into McNeil Lake. Finally, we'll just quick overview of the operation, maintenance, and surveillance manual. So what it does, well, for each dam, it describes all the system's components, provide also some background information on the dams about their construction and their general characteristic. It defines the role and responsibilities of members of SCRD in terms of operation, maintenance, who does what, what's their contact, describe the operating procedures, and also describe the maintenance and testing that needs to be done at the dam. And finally, it lists instrumentation and surveillance requirements. So for a new operator or new employee, it has everything that it needs to understand how the structure works and how it should be operated. For the dam emergency plan, well, the main one, to define roles and responsibilities. So if there's an emergency at the dam, like an imminent failure or something like that, who does what, what's their contact, who needs to be contacted. And that's really key in an emergency situation. That needs to be super clear. And it also described the 5-step process of an emergency action plan. So all the action that needs to be taken as soon as a potential failure is detected. It also provides DEP maintenance requirements. It lists all the emergency contacts that needs to be contacted, and notification charts, and provide guidance also for determining what's the emergency level. Like, is it dramatic or is it under control? And some remedial actions are also provided in the document. So that covers what we've done as part of this project. Thank you for listening, and we'll stick around for Q&A if you have any question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was an interesting read, I think, for all of us. Directors, do we have questions? Director Tai.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. My question is, I'm not quite clear what a stop log system is or what a stop log is. Can you explain that to me?
Yes, so a stop log is a common system in dams. So basically, it's literally some wooded logs that are placed in a sluice, and they're used to increase or lower the water level in the reservoir. So during summer, when you want higher reservoir volume for water supply, you put the logs in, so it will increase your volume in the reservoir. But when you have a flood event, you want the water level to be lower. So usually you take them out, so it will draw down your water level and will give more room for the flood event to accumulate in the reservoir. And they were only present at Edwards Dam and McNeil Lake Dam as well.
Thank you. Director Seegers.
You talked about doing a detailed flood maps, and you would look at what then would happen if there was a dam breach because of water. Do the flood maps that you put together look at time of year as well? Because, I mean, we know with Chapman Bridge, for example, right, the bridge over Chapman on the highway, during the summer, the water's a lot lower. But in the wintertime, it's really high. And when it's coming down and you've got big trees in there, you can have more damage than otherwise. So is that laid out in the report as well?
Yeah, it's discussed, and we recommend looking at both conditions. So usually we looked at sunny day condition, that's how we call it in the field. So that's a summer day, basically, when the water levels are lower. But we also look at flood scenarios. So when water levels are really pretty high, like in Chapman Creek, and water levels are really pretty close to the bridge, for instance. And if you add a failure to it, you'd have an incremental impact that could be bigger. So that's absolutely right. We need to look at a different time of the year in order to understand the full potential impacts of a dam failure.
Okay, and then one follow-up on that then. When you look at that, do you also identify time to respond? Because when we're looking at emergency preparedness and emergency readiness, warnings to residents, that kind of stuff, it will be different.
Absolutely, and that's one of the most important thing of such an analysis is we want to know how long does it take for the flood wave to arrive at a certain location. So we need to understand, like, if we detect something, but it hasn't happened yet, it gives us an idea of how long do we have to evacuate people or to block the bridge or something like that.
Okay.
So absolutely, time is the essence for something like that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Hiltz.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. Yeah, lots of pictures, nice pictures. Nice to see those things. I kind of have two questions. One is kind of a definitions, the difference between deficiencies and non-conformance in terms of the regulation. And the second part is once all this catch-up work is done and the relationship between the dam owner and the regulatory oversight of the provincial bodies. And so you can have all these documents there, but who is actually, is there fines if something doesn't happen? What is the consequence if the SCRD does not do this annual inspections and all this regulatory work? Does the province say, no, you can't operate these? What are the consequences of non-compliance? I guess is the short answer, and the relationship between the owner and the regulatory, and to follow up the difference between deficiencies and non-conformance.
Okay, I'll start with deficiencies and non-conformances. So deficiencies are more, David, you'll help me on that one, but it's more physical problems on the dam. So for instance, for Chapman Dam, we said that it doesn't satisfy the requirements in terms of ice loads, which means that the dam can crack or could fail for ice load. So that's a physical problem. So that's a deficiency. Whereas a non-conformances relates more to operation. Like we said that the dams are not inspected as they should be per requirements. So that's more non-conformances, right? It's not a physical problem at the dam, but it's more a procedure or maintenance or surveillance problem. So that will be the main difference. In terms of regulations, so there's a dam safety officer basically that makes sure that the dams are in compliance in terms of dam safety reviews, OMS reviews, and DEPs. They make sure that all the documents are available at these dams. If it's not the case, I know there's some warnings, but from my experience, I've never seen like any. I've never seen someone reach the point where there's been some real legal consequences. I don't know if David, you have something to add in this regard?
Yeah, no, that would be really highly unusual. I think the province just would exert a lot of pressure on you to come into compliance, and so I think there'd be a lot of letter writing and discussions, and they're usually from my experience that they're pretty good at giving allowances and time frames to for you to fix the problem or deficiencies. If you have a plan in place, they're usually, and it's a reasonable one, they're usually pretty understanding in terms of getting those things implemented. But yeah, I haven't seen any particular, I haven't heard of any legal action per se.
Good, thank you. I see Jim Rosenboom, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. In terms of responsibility, it's ultimately the SCRD's responsibility that there is full compliance with the dam safety regulation. And if there would be an incident, regardless of the level of scrutiny by the province, the SCRD will always be responsible for and liable for any impacts. And a good example of that is the Mount Pollock disaster. It's on the mine side, but it's comparable where it's ultimately the dam owner who is responsible regardless of the level of oversight of the regulator. And there's always a level of responsibility as well of the dam safety engineer, that of course the provincial who signed off on the drawings, etc. And I can talk about a little bit about the province as well in terms of their ability, as I used to oversee this program when I was still within the province. They are really backlogged, so they don't have enough staff to actually regulate and do a proper regulation of all the dams, at least in the South Coast area, in the area we're in within Pinborough, and that's really impacting. So these dams were on their radar, but they were not a priority for them, and that's which is, I think, resulting in the situation that where we're in right now.
Thank you. I'm just going to jump in with one question of my own. I did read through the reports, but I probably missed the bit. What is the life expectancy on these dams? Did you include that in the report? And what's the word I need to search for? If so.
Yeah, no, we didn't include it in the report just because life expectancy depends highly on the level of maintenance and care that is attributed to the dam. So we discussed about it with Steph and Steve, and it's if it's well taken care of and those changes are made, like we're talking about 50 years plus of life expectancy. But once again, they need good care. Like it's a pretty high stressed structure. It's under crazy elements like snowstorm, ice loads, floods. So it needs to be inspected. And if there is some little problem that occurs, if they're taken care of right away, like cracks, if they're repaired right away, it will really improve the life expectancy of the dam.
Thank you. And as a follow-up, is it unusual in your experience to have dams without road access?
No. Well, not in BC at least. I would say that in Quebec, for instance, it's more rare, but in BC there's several of them. I don't know if David, you.
Yeah, it's surprising how many there are like this, and I refer perhaps to some of the hydro plants that we have in remote areas in BC, and you have some near you that you really only have boat access or fly in, and then and I'm thinking Clohome is one area that is difficult to get to, right? So and then there are the different plants there from BC Hydro and the private developers. So it's not. So there are a few up in northern BC as well. So you're not alone.
Thank you. Director Theis.
Thank you, Chair. Couple more questions. You said that the platforms are below flood elevation. How much higher do they need to go?
So for Chapman, it's about 1.1 meter above their present level. For Edwards, it's only 40 centimeters. And for McNeil, it's higher. It's about 1.8 meters above the crest, so maybe 1.5 meters above their actual levels.
Thank you. And I have a question probably for staff, which is, we've seen the estimates for the repair costs, but I assume that the ongoing operations of the dam are going to incur more costs to meet the regulatory requirements. So will that be rolled into our exciting 2021 budget round one?
Thank you, staff. Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity. On page 5 of the report, there is a column that states ongoing costs. Those are the costs associated with annual operation and maintenance, and there is already a budget proposal, a proposed initiative move forward to round 1 to cover these, and that the amount will be updated to reflect what's currently in the report.
Thank you. I see Director Hiltz.
Thank you. The kind of concept I'm thinking about is the understanding of how the watershed functions and how these structures respond to that. I noted in the report the meteorological data was not there, and you had to come up with a model of what this would look like. So I'm just thinking, from a provincial point of view, is understanding the watershed dynamics beneficial to maintaining the dams? I think that's how I'm expressing. Yeah, the relationship between, because you're talking the structural, the engineering, the safety of the dams, and the regional district also has this concern about the watershed as a natural asset, and there does seem to be a relationship between some of the data, these are sort of separate paths that the regional district is going on. I'm just wondering if there's an overlap between those kind of natural asset management of watershed and the administration of a dam structure on that watershed.
Yes, definitely. And that's something we looked at. So when we do stability analysis and we looked at the platform and wanted to know if it's below flood level, the first thing we've done to answer those questions was we built a numerical watershed model at the dam, and we looked at the local precipitation data, and basically we input rain on the numerical model of the watershed to see what's the volume of water that goes into the lake and what's the fluctuation of water level, what's the maximum water level that can be reached. So all the recommendation arise from a certain physical understanding of the watershed at the dam, though, not more downstream. So it needs to be understood that the dams are at the head of the watersheds, so pretty high up. There's still a really large part at the downstream end of the dams. And that part was not considered in the analysis just because it wasn't needed. But there's some overlaps, like it's the same precipitation data that would be used. It's just the watershed model could be extended to have a better understanding of precipitation and flow in Chapman Creek further downstream.
Thank you very much. Director Theis?
Thank you again. I'm just wondering about the McNeil Lake Saddle Dam. It sounds like it's no longer functional, and so are we just going to leave it as is, and basically all it is a partial blockage in the stream?
Yeah, well, there's two things to the saddle dam. The first one is that it has been breached. We're not sure when, but there's it's been excavated to a lower elevation, which means that the water can go through the dam in both directions. You can have an inflow into McNeil Lake when McNeil Lake is lower, or on the other side, it could flow the other way as well, out of the McNeil Lake through that breach. So you're right, it's not functioning as a saddle dam per se. So that's why it's been classified as low. To be completely off the hook, and it would need to be decommissioned, so completely excavated, just removed basically. But the thing is, the understanding of the lake itself and how it spills through the saddle dams and over the saddle dams is not well understood presently. So it's not really to be off the hook. It needs to be a bit better understood how it works, and just its elevation is not known, so it's hard to say how it relates to McNeil Lake. So there's still a bit of work. It will need to be cleared of vegetation and just surveyed, so we have an idea of what's its elevation and how it's overtopped, and if it can be completely removed safely.
Okay, so follow up. What are the next steps at this point? Then, are there any costs involved with this saddle dam right now? And does it have to be periodically inspected despite it not being functional at all until we remove it? Or what's the better plan going forward long term?
Yeah, so for now, it will be to clear it and survey it, just so we have an idea of what it looks like. And while studying what would be the impact of a spill of McNeil Lake in adjacent watersheds, it could be, if we see that there's no big impact, it could be completely decommissioned safely, and then it would not need to be inspected or anything. I would ask for now, it would still be a good thing to inspect it yearly, as it's currently done anyway. Just a quick visit to see if it changed and how it looks like.
Thank you. Director Toth.
Thank you, Chair. I've got sort of 3 sets of questions, so I'm happy to take turns with other people. Recognizing that Chapman is a fairly steep geography, and we've got Chapman Creek that leaves it as its primary way out. I'm just wondering if Edwards Dam is a similar situation. I believe there's other outlets from Edwards, and so I'm wondering if you looked as part of the overtopping of that dam, what that impact would be on the other outlets from Edwards.
Yeah, so you're right. The watershed is a lot milder, a lot less steep, and on the northern part, there could be some outflows, but the water level fluctuation at Edwards is a lot lower, mainly due to the fact that it has a really small watershed and the slopes are really mild, so it doesn't react as much. So if there's overtopping on the northern side of the watershed, it will be minimal and not an issue compared to McNeil, where you can have over a meter of overtopping along the rim of the reservoir. So that can have a pretty significant spill flow, whereas Edward, it's not really a concern.
Sorry, just as a quick follow-up, I guess my question was more around whether overtopping at Edwards is a significant concern, or if the natural outlet from Edwards can handle the surge flow.
Yeah, no, it's more a concern on the dam itself, just because the dam was not built to be overtop, especially on the left abutment. It will erode the bedrock on the downstream end, and it can damage some instruments that are required for safe operation of the dam. So it's more to the dam itself, but the creek, Edwards Creek, it's not an issue really. It's really for the dam itself.
I see. All right. Everybody else seems to have dropped off and left you holding the bag, Director Toth.
Well, all right. I had seen Director Seeger's hand, but okay. I'm just wondering, with the construction cost estimates for Chapman and Edwards, it was mentioned that helicopter access is a significant component of this, because we obviously can't drive in there. I'm just wondering if you had a numerical value associated with the helicopter access. Like, if this were road access, how much cheaper would this work be? Do we know?
We do know. It's in the report. I don't have them all under my eyes, but from what I remember, it was about 150,000 just for the helicopter costs. So in the reports, in the appendix, there's the full cost breakdown, and the helicopter costs are included. And yeah, we called Airspan helicopter in Seychelles to have a quote and see what's their hourly rate, and the final cost of helicopter will really depend on the contractor. Like what's the need, like how much helicopter ready will want, and that's kind of what will define the final cost. But yeah, so it's in the report.
Thank you. Hadn't made it as far as the appendices, so.
That's totally fine. I understand
The
that.
numbers here at hand, it's 170 for Edwards, and for Chapman, it's 160 for Edwards.
Thank you. So about a third, at least, on the Edwards one. Okay. And then my final question, and this one's really more for our staff. Are staff capable of doing the brush clearing work around these dams, or is this really a contracted out service that we would require?
Jim Rosenboom, do you want to take that, or Mr. Walkie?
Thank you, Chair. Staff are limited by chainsaw rules to minimal brush cutting, like under 4-inch tree base, I believe it is. Anything larger than that, we need to hire contractors. So it might be a blend of both.
Thank you very much. Director Seegers is having computer problems and has temporarily melted down. So it's over to Director Hiltz.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I got a question about the recommendations on the report. The report is received, and on page 4, it's saying that staff is recommending the initiation of design. And so the report in some ways feels like a preliminary budget report. So do we need anything in the recommendations from the board to enable staff to conduct this work formally? Would that be useful?
Thank you for the question. The budget proposal, that is the proposed initiative that's on this item that's being moved forward to round 1 as a budget proposal. There is already one on the table, and with more or less the same scope as that's currently recommended here. The scope and cost estimates will be updated prior to in the round 1 budget proposal. So there's no further action required at this time.
Thank you very much. We have run out of questions, at least temporarily. It's 11 o'clock. I think this is and we have received a report, so there are no further motions necessary at this point. So I think this is a good time to thank our presenters and then take a short break. So thank you very much, dam inspectors. That was an interesting report, and I agree with Director Hiltz. I really enjoyed the photos. That was very helpful because I don't get up there very often. So
No, nobody does. So it's good. Yeah.
Well, it was our pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
thank you. It was very interesting reading. And so we're going to take a 10-minute break, and we'll be back at 11:10, hopefully with Director Seegers. All right, we are going to resume our meeting, our infrastructure services meeting. Director Hiltz.
Yeah, yes, just to follow up on the last item and thinking that this is a nice report for WASAC to receive. So do we need a motion for WASAC to receive this, or is it going to be received as regular business?
GM Rosenboom. You're muted.
The famous button. Thank you for the question. The report will be brought forward to WASAC's attention. But because it's dam safety, it's a little bit outside of their actual scope in terms of providing, because it's really related to more operational and maintenance than planning and policy and public participation, what is within their scope. But they will be made aware of it.
Thank you. Director Seegers.
Okay, so first of all, are we on Annex A? Is that where we are?
I was just, because Director Hiltz had raised the issue of WASAC in the chat, so
Yes.
I thought we would go back to that. But we were in fact going to go to Annex B unless there was
I
any.
have a question on Annex A.
Okay, go ahead.
On page 4, and this is to one of the questions that GM Rosenboom talked about during the conversation before. He's talking about staff and ongoing expenses, basically, on page 5. But prior to that, it talks about operational implications and weekly inspections, weekly remote camera surveillance, etc. Provincial engineer coming in and doing some training. Is that already included in those ongoing expenses on the table on page 5?
Correct. That's
Okay.
included in there. And
Okay.
it's expected that we currently foresee that we can, we have the skills, skilled enough staff to take on these duties within their current roles.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Director Ties.
Thank you. Yeah, 2 questions from staff, also still on Annex A. One is, what does the microhydro on Edwards Lake do? And the other one is, if we were to build a reservoir, I'm assuming that reservoir would have similar requirements. And has that so far been incorporated in some of those considerations? I guess we haven't really looked at ongoing costs yet all that much, but I'm guessing that will have to happen.
Thank you for the question. I will answer the second part, and the first part I will have Mr. Walkie respond to. In terms of the raw water reservoir, you might recall that we set a limit of 15 meters of height of the dam as a max. And that's in particular because of this. Above 50 meters, international more stringent regulations would apply, and 50 meters would be the maximum height that falls within the dam safety regulation. And in terms of ongoing cost, there has been some consideration to date given to that as well, in terms of as well as the emergency response. And some of the work completed in terms of classification, emergency dam failure classification, has actually been used by this consultant in their analysis.
Thank you. Mr. Walkie, did you have more to add?
Yes, thank you, Chair. The microhydro generation was installed by our SCADA tech, Dale Sapach, who's a fantastic team member, and he's come up with ways to produce energy at the dams. And at Chapman, we solely use solar panel. There's enough sunlight there. But what he's found at Edwards Lake is the solar panel isn't adequate at certain times of the year. And it's not favorable to cut trees down to get more sun on our solar panels. So we came up with the idea of putting a small micro hydro generation there to recharge the batteries when the solar panels were adequate. Thank you.
Very cool. I see the elf from Area A.
Thank you, Chair. I was saving all my questions up. I was curious, if we had an earthquake and both dams failed, is that considered in the likelihood, or is it too far out there? That's my first question.
That would be a question that would need to be answered by the consultants, and they are not with us anymore. But as far as I know, that scenario has been considered and will be considered moving forward when we do more detailed modeling and flood mapping.
Okay, thank you. And my second question, it looks like a lot of visits by our staff, and if we had easy access, they'd probably do more. Did we ever consider ATV access as a alternative to get to the dams? I noticed in one of the looks I had on the web that the forest road was once quite close to Edwards, but then it was closed. So there must be something pretty close already. And then I don't know if it's practical to extend from Edwards to McNeil or to Chapman. Has that been looked at?
I could probably tackle that one myself, but I'll throw that over to staff.
Thank you, Chair. It's a beautiful walk. You should go up there in the summertime, and it's generally walking on a very narrow trail through blueberries, wild blueberries. The logging road, when we built the dam at Edwards Lake in the early 90s, was being pushed right next to the lake, and it's being decommissioned right back to what's called the upper parking lot. So it is a bit of a walk even to Edwards Lake along a decommissioned logging road that has logs put across it for wildlife, things like that. And I believe you're not even supposed to take pedal bikes in there, and certainly not your dogs. So ATVs are not an option.
Yeah, and I would say that the tetrahedron road, just even getting to the parking lot, is not trivial either. So
this is because it's a park, then, is a little bit of a problem we got. Okay, thank you.
It's a park at the end of a long and rather rough four-wheel drive road. Yeah. Okay, folks, it's time to move on to the next exciting item on our agenda, which is about leaks. Very cool. Leak correlator report. And who is presenting that one? Mr. Shea.
Thank you, Chair McMahon. Leak correlators can be used to help confirm and pinpoint a leak on a segment of water main during field investigations. Staff recommend purchasing a leak correlator and integrating it into existing work plans as an additional tool to help maintain efficient water distribution infrastructure. The correlator's functionality will be evaluated after 12 months of use, and then consideration will be given to expanding the use of the technology. Thank you, and staff are happy to take any questions at this time. This report was in support of a budget proposal that was in pre-budget.
Thank you very much. Do we have questions from the assembled? Director Ties.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, staff, for that report. I'm just wondering. We've heard some. Some of the critics have said that we, especially around the water meters, have said that unless we make sure that our water mains are in good shape and that and we keep our side of the house clean, that they don't see a point in putting in water meters. So I'm just wondering if we want to go further than just putting it into our current or our current scope, and to actually do a one-time assessment of our whole system and fund it, so that we can at least know the condition, or at least see how many leaks we have, and then kind of go from there. So I'm just wondering if we should expand rather than go with staff recommendations.
So who from staff would like to tackle that one?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. I can start, and I would invite others to add to what I respond. We can definitely expand. It would be a one-time funding would be required for some that's included in option 2, which is about $150,000. It will be the financial implications. I have to say is that it will be a one-time exercise. So if we assess a main, especially in older main, let's say in April, and it does mean that in October there might not be a leak present there. So but it would definitely give us some idea about where are the highest frequency mains. The discussion staff is currently is frequently having, especially with respect to the older asbestos cement remains in North and South Bender, where we know that there are the most main breaks, as well as where we expect the most leaks to occur. Are we going to invest a significant amount? What is more beneficial, investing a significant amount in fixing leaks, or at certain point just replace the entire main? And but the replacement will definitely require a significant amount of additional funding that's currently not available in both systems.
Thank you. Director Seegers.
Thank you. I'm going to point to page 314 as further information from staff around the options. Basically, it says, they want to try out the technology, find out how effective it is, and get some experience with using it before determining a more widespread or additional uses of it. So I'd be in support of option 1 at this point. I'm sure once they've used the technology, if they feel that it will provide additional information with additional usage, they can come back at that time and we can look at moving things further.
Thank you. Director Lee.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Director Seegers in that it's important to understand this leak detector or leak correlator. And perhaps it is a new tool that can help us forecast the future. But it seems to me like having an overall survey and being proactive in planning for upgrades and having essentially shovel-ready projects in case of grant availability is an awful good thing for us to do throughout the system, because grants are the thing that are going to help us do this. If we can't take advantage of grants, it's sure going to be super expensive for everything for us. So it seems to me like I've always assumed we had such a plan. And I've now, because of communications back and forth, realized that we actually haven't firmed up a plan such as that. And I was just wondering, is there a budget proposal for 2021 that I've missed that would say that we could do this, or is it planned? Or I'd be interested in GM's Rosenblum thoughts on that.
Thank you. I think there are two different things here. There is the identification of leaks, the detection of leaks to ensure that we can fix them, which is the leak correlator. And then there is the our main replacement program and plans. There is not a, there is a correlation. I see a correlation between the two, but there is not a one-on-one correlation. If we know that there are a lot of older AC mains or undersized mains, for example, in North and South Spanish water systems that we flagged as, we earmarked as will need to be replaced at some point if funding if available. We are working towards identifying those. Is not solely driven by if there are a lot of leaks on them or not, because we know that they are the most vulnerable mains anyway. If we have water main breaks in North and South Bender, it's always in one of those older AC mains. So doing a one-time scan will not immediately result in a clear picture on what should be the mains that should be replaced or not, because there are other considerations. For example, will water main replacement increase fire flow in an area, or will it provide address other water supply issues in the area?
Thank you.
Is there anything you added here by Mr. Walker or Shea? Yeah.
Just follow up from me on that same issue.
Mr. Walkie first, thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Just putting a few things in perspective, we have over 400 kilometers of water main, and we were told, I believe, by when we were getting quotes on equipment, 3 kilometers is a really good day. So you can see how long it will take to get to the very end, and it's almost like fire hydrant maintenance. Then you have to start again at the other end to do it again. So it's if you take 400 divided by 3, the best case scenario is 136 days of people doing what they experience, people looking at this system. Talking about AC water mains, my experience with AC water mains is when they break, they break. You know they're broken, usually. And Markway is an example where we had, it wasn't asbestos cement, but we have a number of leaks had been identified on that road, and we're just completing that main replacement right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, did you have a follow-up, Director Lee?
Yes, back to that being proactive, a proactive plan ahead of time to understand and get ready. It seems like our water systems, I believe in all parts of the coast, have been built gradually by most likely developers, and they were built to the standard of the day and as cheap as possible. So I know in Area A, we have things like not enough fire hydrants, for instance, too small a mains, population popped up where people didn't expect. And so we've got a fairly daunting road ahead. I was wondering if the same situation is for the regional water, if that's the same situation in the Seashell, Roberts Creek, the Elphinstone areas.
Mr. Walkie?
Thank you, Chair. The regional systems had a line item budget for many years to replace lines like asbestos cement water mains, and we're almost completed replacing them. There is a section on Reed Road. The majority of the water mains in the regional district are ductile iron water main, which is our standard. And when a subdivision is installed, we ensure that they follow our standards to install those water mains. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll add that there are a few areas. There's a couple in Area E where there should be water, there should be hydrants, but there aren't because the water main isn't sufficient to support it. Director Seegers.
Thank you. I would like to move the recommendation as on page 312.
Seconder? Seconded. Thank you. Further discussion on the item, Director Hiltz?
Yeah, I am supportive of option 1. I do have a kind of a question, and it has to do with the accountability, the transparency, and the continuous nature of a proactive leak system, leak detection program. And right now it's framed as an approach. And I'm not sure if an approach is a program. A program, you go hunting for them. Approaches, I'm not exactly sure what an approach is, but I don't think it's necessarily the same as a proactive program. And in terms of, there was an item about the number of water meters. So in terms of Director Tai saying, we want water meters for everyone. And so in order to show the accountability on the utility side, having a number of water meters on the utility side, I still have not seen that number come forth. I'm hoping it'll be in the frequently asked questions of the water meter AAP. And the continuous nature, every time, there's 1,000, as Mr. Walkie said, every time you open a hydrant and close it is an opportunity for a leak to form. And there's 1,000 of those, and I'm not sure how many times a year hydrants are open and closed, but every time, same as your faucet in your house, if you don't close it, it drips. So I'm more interested in seeing a demonstration of what the active leak program is. And I'm wondering if there's room for a motion about the reporting back of how the approach becomes a proactive program. That's kind of, I'm not sure if there's an and that in there, but I'm certainly interested in seeing how an approach becomes a proactive program. So I'm just thinking maybe perhaps an amendment to that, if there's other comments from directors.
We have a maybe amendment. We will go over to Director Lee.
Sorry, I was on a different subject, so I should.
Well, we do have a motion on the floor. So we either amend it or we don't. And if I don't get an amendment, I'm going to call the question. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands. So I'm going to call the question. Oh, wait. There he is. Come on, so you can do it.
I will make an amendment to it that staff report back on the movements to an active leak detection program at a future meeting. That would be the recommendation.
Do we have a seconder for that amendment? I am not seeing one at the moment. GM Rosenboom.
Thank you. Just in terms of clarification, I think what Director Hiltz is asking for is clarity on the leak detection program in the main distribution system, because we are developing our metering program that includes a leak detection program on the private side. And I think, are you asking for both, or can you clarify? Maybe it's good to include something around that in the motion.
I would, the motion, the intent would be a comprehensive leak detection program, however that is, whether that's private side, public side. I don't really, it's about all water systems leak, and there's an acceptable amount of leakage. And but there does come a point where the benefits of finding the leak outweigh the cost of actually that loss of water. So there is a happy medium to find, and I'm not sure what the SCRD considers an acceptable amount of leakage at this point in time, but that's the accountability point. So it would be just what is more details on the proactive finding of leaks on throughout the water system, private or public. That would be the scope of the language.
While respecting the point that you are making, you don't have a seconder for your amendment. So I think we should vote on the motion on the floor at this time. So I'm calling the motion. All in favor, please. Any opposed? Seeing none opposed. Did you want to refer your concern to a future meeting, or how do we want to? Director Seegers.
Thank you. If I can be clear on what the motion is, I would second that.
Back to Director Hiltz. Can you clarify the motion that you are attempting to make?
Sure. That staff report back to a future committee about the SCRD's proactive steps to leak detection in the water system.
Very good. And that is seconded. Thank you very much. I am not seeing any more hands up at the moment. So I'm going to call the question. All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? That passes. Thank you very much. Next item is the COVID-19 Safe Restart Grants for Local Government. Chief Financial Officer.
Chair,
Yes,
before we leave this last item, I actually had a question.
Okay, I beg your pardon. I didn't see your hand up.
Well, I put it down for this motion discussion because it was a
that's great. I got lost. Okay.
Thank you. My question was that we talked in this report, we talk about option 1 and the cost of option 1 and a timeline for next steps for option 1. Was there a need to make any recommendations that we actually would like option 1 explored or done, or perhaps comments on that?
Staff, please.
Thank you. The resolution, there is currently already a proposed initiative being brought forward as a budget proposal to Round 1 for the purchase of a leak correlator. And the resolution currently is carried by the board, by the committee, as presented on page 312, provides us with the direction on what to include in that budget proposal.
Yes, and that would include the timeline for next steps, saying that we're going, okay, then I'm happy. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry I missed you. All right, now we're back to the exciting COVID-19 Safe Restart Grants.
Thank you, Chair. So this past November, the SCRD received $521,000 from the provincial COVID-19 Safe Restart Grants for local governments in response to the fiscal impacts related to COVID-19. Separate funding for the transit service is expected to flow through the annual operating agreement with BC Transit, which is expected in January. Through information sharing with provincial and other local government bodies, options range from addressing internal needs to partnering for regional initiatives. 4 options have been provided based on the program goals, and these include offsetting 2020 deficits and 2021 revenue shortfalls due to COVID-19, improving interconnectivity and virtual communications, revised space needs analysis and implementation, and services for the vulnerable persons and/or a collaborative regional project. Proposals for considerations for funding allocations will be put forward as part of the round 1 budget deliberations. So staff can answer any questions as part of the options presented.
Thank you. Director Seegers.
Thank you. I know in the amendment to the agenda, the letter that the regional district received was included. And I have also read the one from the district of Sechelt. And what I noticed was different was the regional district actually, that letter identified dates by when the funding had to be allocated, where the one municipality, at least the district of Sechelt, did not have any dates indicated in it.
Thank you. Director Beamish.
Just a point that I think it is that in terms of timing, if you're bringing recommendations forward or options forward that will rely or depend upon the participation of municipalities, and I'll speak for Gibson's, to contribute towards the option, we should have that conversation with our council first, so that they are realistic when they come to the board and not going to have to then be referred to, because if we are being asked to participate in a cost sharing, we would need to know that to make it so that there's some realistic expectation that there could be approval.
Excellent point. Thank you. Folks?
Just Chair, just if I could add to that comment, most certainly staff are engaged in conversations as to how that process would roll out. And so even our internal analysis as to how far these funds can go based on these needs is still a work in progress. So based on the report, I think what we're focusing on is addressing the internal needs of the regional district and then seeing what remaining funds would be available at the end. Because, you know, the regional district and the focus for this funding has really focused on the municipal governments. So our share is considerably less. So it might not go quite as far as some of the other dollars, but still appreciative of receiving them. So that's the focus on the process. So hearing that we need to make sure that gets to any local government as far as their budget process is very well understood. So thank you for pointing that out.
Good, thank you. Director Seegers.
Thank you. I know that Chair Pratt on the meeting on Friday with Minister Osborne brought up the question, because I mean, all of us, we've basically gotten those 7 points. We don't know much further. I know that, you know, Tina, you're probably in conversation with the other finance people in the province, etc. But to the general public and even to us as board members, we don't know what it can be used for, what it can't be used for, and all those kind of nuances. So Chair Pratt actually brought up on the call on Friday with Minister Osborne that there, you know, it would be nice to be able to have the municipalities contribute to the regional district for some of the costs that are mutual costs kind of thing. And it was, you were assured, or she was assured that that can happen. Because we didn't even know if that could happen, you know, like, so there's lots of stuff to be sorted out yet with regards to this.
Tina?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So yes, good points. And of course, one of the mechanics of a regional district is such where if there is a cost sharing initiative through one of the regional district services, through the apportionment allocation, that is one of the funding sources. So I think that's part of what a consideration would be going forward as part of these options. If I could, Chair, too, just regarding the point of clarification on the program, because I think that a lot of us in local government finance have wondered that. And the Government Finance Officers Association of BC actually has worked with the ministry and has provided a survey asking some questions back and forth from government finance entities. So I know that sharing actually was sent over to the District of Sechelt CFO yesterday. So those are the types of things that I think are still in flux, is clarifying the intricacies of the program.
Thank you. Director Pratt.
Thank you. Director Seegers brought up a couple of my points. I also wanted to say that I also expressed with Minister Osborne what we feel was a large discrepancy with the funding allocation for a regional district such as ours when we do provide so many of the services and within our Sunshine Coast area. And so I would also actually be very happy to have the committee's support for the board to write a letter further expounding on that fact about the discrepancy and the perceived discrepancy, because it's for us, when we have the population that we have, the services we provide, while the money is welcome, I'm not going to say anything on that. It feels disproportionate to our level of service, our population, and I wish they would have had a better or a different way of expounding on that. And I think Chair McMahon in her latest newsletter from Everything Elphinstone has a couple of succinct facts about, when you compare the size of our budget at the regional district compared with the size of the budget at the town of Gibson's and the size of the budget at the district of Sechelt and the per capita allocation, and Chair McMahon can expound on this a little bit more. It is really, really disproportionate. And the only answer that I received from ministry staff was because municipalities had to pay out the regional district on the same time schedule. That was in recognition of that. Like that was the only explanation really that I got. And Directors Beamish or Seegers may have more to say on that, but the reasoning behind how we got it just seems so simplistic compared to what we do receive or what we did receive in comparison to municipalities.
Thank you. Mayor Beamish.
Yeah, I don't really want to get involved in kind of that comparison without understanding the provincial position as to how they got there. So, but I will say that that I have approached both our staff and Chair Pratt with the idea that if there are areas that can be identified that the municipality can clearly help with, and the one I mentioned was recreation, where recreation has been identified as a significant deficit position, that we are certainly prepared to step up and offer to pay our share of that deficit position. But that would have to apply equally across the coast with the Sechelt and the SIGD also participating as a program as opposed to a one-off. So that I think there's lots to be discussed on here, and clearly it would have to be a resolution of council. But there is no intention for the town of Gibson's to see the SCRD taxing authority lessened simply because of that. If there's a per capita cost to make up on recreation, then let's talk about it. And if there's other areas that we share, let's talk about them. And we're certainly prepared to do that. We have started spending that money. So we better do that before it's all gone. Thank you.
What a good idea. Thank you. Director Hills.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I'm just going to speak in support of the SCRD taking a letter to seek further clarifications. I was looking at that, what's it called, the local government grants regulation, which this funding came through, and the amount of the grant is at the discretion of the minister. So I'd kind of like to know a little bit about how that discretion was formulated. So that's, I'm supportive of the letter.
Thank you very much. Director Seegers.
Thank you. I think there's still lots to sort out. I mean, as Tina indicated, they have actually announced the money that the regional district will be getting for transit. It's somewhere around $800,000 that's the numbers they put out. So there's other pieces that still need to be looked at. We still need to, staff are doing all this work as they've been doing all year, the impact of COVID and what the financial hit is. And until we have that information, and the information, which is we're going to have to look at what does it look like in 2021. We don't know that. So there's still so much to sort out. Are we looking at the Sunshine Coast? Yes. If there is a requirement that, there's something that Sechelt has to contribute, Gibson's has to contribute, we're open to those conversations, right? This is not our money, it's taxpayer money, and it's to be used for the taxpayers.
Thank you. I'm just going to say from, where I sit in my area, all of these suggestions for where to spend money are good ones. And I have no specific direction to offer because I think that staff and the municipalities working together can come up with good suggestions. The only question I had is whether we would want any feedback, or the municipalities would want any feedback before we get to round one? Or is round one the best time to go into detail on this?
If I could answer, Chair, I think that once we delve into the internal needs, and we can find out and continue those conversations with our member municipal partners. You know, one of the areas that is like identified in the staff report is, and mentioned already and coming to subsequent verbal report today, is recreation. So how could that roll out? So that would be one of the areas that we most likely know that will be impacted in 2021. So what could that possibly look like? So I think we're still developing some of these initiatives. So we want to make sure, and I think we're hearing the message very clearly, that as soon as possible to make sure we flesh these out and get these to any partnering local government on the Sunshine Coast as soon as possible. So we'll strive to do that.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'm hoping rather earnestly for a motion to appear somewhere on the floor. Director Seegers.
I'll move the recommendation as on page 316.
And I see that seconded. Do we have any further discussion on this? Seeing no more hands, I'm calling the question. All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Seeing none, excellent. Thank you very much. Director Pratt.
I'd just like to say that as more information comes out, because any recommendation we have to write a letter isn't going to be actioned by the board until January anyways. So I will bring back that, as information comes out, we can revisit that in the new year about any advocacy that we want to do or any further clarification on the political level. I know staff is working really strongly with the minister or with the ministry staff on the staff level. So but I will just put a pin in that for later when we're in the new year.
Thank you. Director Seegers?
Yeah, and I mean, I agree with that. I think at this point, staff still need to provide more information to us about what the actual impact is and, you know, what the funding looks like based on that impact. So once they have a clear picture, we'll have a better idea of what could actually go forward to the minister. So totally agree.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And thank you to our municipal partners for working together as Team Sunshine Coast. Next on the agenda is item 7, which is the PMAC minutes. I notice that there are 2 recommendations in there potentially of interest. I believe recommendation 2 has already been actioned. And there is a recommendation number 5. Could staff provide a little clarity? Ms. Cooper?
Thank you, Chair, for the question. In regards to a letter being sent, no, the SCRD has not sent a letter to the ministry. On the October ISC agenda, there was a letter from the minister speaking to the engagement. There was a discussion held at that time, but there was not a motion or a recommendation made to submit a letter. That said, several solid waste staff did submit feedback, and that feedback aligned with what's in that recommendation.
Okay, so recommendation 2 was giving feedback to the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change strategy on recycling regulations. And that, you know, that's finished now. The comment period, I believe, is closed. Recommendation 5 is a request for data on illegal dumping. Would anybody care to pull that recommendation from the minutes? Director Seegers.
I guess I'd ask staff the question, do they actually have the type of information that PMAC is saying they want? If we don't have it, then there's no point in actioning this to staff.
Staff?
Thanks for the question. We have limited data that could be provided, but not necessarily to the fullest extent, but we would provide whatever data that we could produce to best meet that recommendation.
Director Seegers?
So I will move that this recommendation be action to staff's best efforts.
Second, I see it seconded. Any further deliberations? Seeing none, I'm calling the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, we can move on. I don't think there was anything else from PMAC, so the next item up is the WASAC minutes. Do we have any further follow-up to the WASAC minutes? There was a question raised in agenda review as to whether there is a desire on the part of either WASAC or the board to fill the 11th seat on that committee. But I think that should really be up to the discussion at WASAC, or at least for starters. Director Seegers.
Thank you. I have been in conversation with Councillor Lamb because he is actually our representative for this. And I don't know how widely the information about meetings is actually being disseminated. Could we just ensure that it is going to, now, I have to say also he has some technical challenges at times. So could you just ensure that the information gets to him about the next meeting? Because he hears about them after the fact typically, and he would actually like to be there.
Thank you. Director Beamish.
I'm going to sign on to that as well because I was not informed of the last meeting in December, and I'm the Gibson's liaison to that meeting, so I was not informed.
I apologize. We'll make sure that we tighten up our processes there. Thank you.
Thank you. And my recollection is also that we'll be getting a report from staff in January about processes around electronic meetings to make it easier for people to attend some of the committee meetings that are held in public. So, okay, Director Hilt.
Yeah, speaking to the resignation of the member from the Eastbourne water system, my preference would be to be able to hold it for one of the smaller water systems rather than add on another Chapman representative. So that would be the intention. Is I think there is high value in having an odd water system represented at this table. So that would be to hold it there for a while, not to immediately fill it.
Excellent, thank you. Since we have a table full of oddities here, I think we should respect that idea. Director Seegers.
So given the resignation, will staff be advertising to find somebody for that position? You know, from one of those other, you know, potentially Eastbourne again or something?
Staff?
Thank you for the question. It's probably, if we are directed by the board to advertise to run an advertisement campaign, then we can do that. Haven't initiated anything yet.
Director Hiltz?
Is it reasonable for staff to send a letter to the Eastbourne Community Center, who essentially represents that water system, as looking for suggestions? Is that a reasonable thing from staff?
Yeah, we can definitely connect with them and see if they can provide any suggestions with names. And I think for such an action, no recommendation is needed. For a more formal application process, yes, but we can do that. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we can leave the question of the application process till after Christmas. it would be nice to have an Eastbourne representative on that committee, given the, repairs needed to Eastbourne in the immediate future. But it's hard to get volunteers from really small catchment areas like that. So, okay, next item on our agenda, if everybody's happy, is the one we've all been waiting for, recreation restart. Who do we have with, oh my heavens, it's GM Hall.
Thank you, Chair McMahon. So staff would like to provide an update to the Committee on Recreation Restart activities with regard to both facilities and programs. I will share some information, and we also have Manager of Recreation Services, Graham Dawn, here to add some detail as well. And this is coming as a late item because of timing, because we had a health order extension issued last week, and then further guidance from the BC Recreation and Parks Association come this week. So firstly, with regards to that health order, under the current order, which is in place until at least January 8th, there are a number of restrictions on recreation programming, and we are at what the BC RPA is calling stage 2.5, which means that there's no group fitness permitted and no contact team sports. So this, in a practical sense, this means no hockey games, no pickleball, spin, yoga, or aquafit is taking place. Staff have worked through adjusting all of our program schedules, and we've notified user groups and patrons as each successive change to these orders comes in, and we've been able to achieve ongoing compliance. Next, with regard to ice at Sunshine Coast Arena, with no adult hockey games, the demand for ice at our facilities is reduced. Under the current conditions, we still have substantial requests, about 45 hours per week, for ice at Sunshine Coast Arena, and that's coming mostly from our youth groups. With this in mind, as well as demand for the public skate programs, which have been just about fully subscribed lately and looking forward, staff are planning for ice install in January 2021, as previously indicated to the board and per our normal service level. And that the MCC panel plant upgrade project timeline, which was approved this fall, the timeline has slipped by a few days due to supply chain issues related to equipment, but we still expect commissioning to be undertaken in the first week of January, which would have ice available mid-month. And the timing for the renewal and update to the current health order of January 8th means that if new restrictions are introduced that affect the ability of even youth groups to make use of ice time, we would have time to reevaluate the plan. Staff have been in contact with user groups and will communicate this plan to them. And in terms of financial implications, if we remain at stage 2.5 without any adult ice requests or limited ice requests, there will be revenue impacts for the recreation service of up to $30,000 less for the remainder of the regular season. And staff will incorporate these impacts into 2021 budget planning. And now I'll ask Manager Dawn to add a few details about other aspects of recreation restart, please.
Thank you, GM Hall. So I just wanted to provide an update on our Gibson's Pool restart. So since board directed staff to proceed with opening the facility in December, staff have been working as fast as possible to proceed with this. So just some updates. We have our glass barrier being installed today for the reception counter. Our smaller bodies of water are being filled and treated this week. Our circulation pumps and other mechanical equipment testing is to occur next week. We are still awaiting the water test results for the facility. It is expected that we should have these back the week of December 28th. Our safety plans, risk assessments, and supply procurement is currently underway and is ongoing. Our staff training and orientation is scheduled for the week of January 4th. And then we are looking at a tentative target reopening date of Monday, January 11th. So as GM Hall alluded to, our programming is rather limited under the state of the current provincial health order. That being said, some new guidelines were released on Monday from the province in regards to what is required to reintroduce low intensity fitness activities. And by definition, these would attribute to yoga and similar such activities. So we are still relatively limited for aquafit and other programming, but we are looking at updating our safety plans with the goal to reintroduce these programs in the new year. And we also have recognized that there has been increasing demand for pool use at the Seashell Aquatic Center, and that continues to go up as an ongoing basis. On December 9th, staff proceeded with moderately increasing our participant intakes by 20% in hopes of allowing more people to access the facility over the holidays. And this change is also in accordance with our change room occupancy guidelines and further measures. From there, I'll hand it back over to GM Hall for some further context. Thank you.
Thanks, Manager Don. And so if we take all of that together, and noting that staff have remained diligent in controlling and reducing where we can operating costs while doing everything that we can to safely drive up patronage and revenue, the result is that the projected year-end deficit worst case scenario that we talked about earlier in the year has not materialized. And I'm pleased to share that the preliminary numbers show a very close to balanced budget, and staff will report further on this at year end as part of our regular variance reporting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have questions? Director Seegers.
Thank you. I don't know, well, you probably will be able to answer this question. When the pool is open in Gibson's, how many people can actually be in there at a time? I mean, I know the hot tub, for example, in Seashell, you can have 2 people in the hot tub. And the hot tub in Gibson's pool is smaller, so you're probably looking at 1 person. And what about the pool? What kind of numbers are we looking at?
Yeah.
Thank you for the question. So that's correct. Our hot tub is rather limited for size, so it'd be 1 person or a family bubble would be fine as well, and that would be similar to other smaller bodies of water. Currently, we're looking at establishing our intakes at 12 people to begin with as our slow and steady gradual approach. And as we try that out, we'll look at expanding where possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? I'm not seeing any. So thank you very much for the recreation update. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I'll just make a comment. I cannot imagine the work you guys are doing with, I mean, we experienced it, Chair Pratt and, Director Beamish and I experienced it at the beginning of the year, when all of this started happening. But where we are right now, the rules have pretty much stabilized. So many people in the office, all that kind of stuff. But you guys are still dealing with that on a sometimes daily basis and week to week basis. So you're forever having to change up. So that takes a lot of energy, a lot of attention. So I just commend you for what you're doing to stay on top of this and support our community.
Thank you for the comment, Director.
Definitely. Okay, we're going to move on to communications. We have the Wild Safe BC report, which we already discussed at length earlier. Then item 11 is the runway at the airport. I'm wondering if directors from Seashell have any comments on the runway.
You want me to take that one? Okay. So we are still awaiting word from the province about confirmation on grant funding. This process that we're going through is in anticipation of the awarding of the grants. It is not being managed by the District of Seashell as such. We have actually hired Associated Engineering because it's a federal process. So not only are we looking for input and feedback from within our community, but part of the process is even going to other airports around the area that could potentially be impacted by anything happening here. So it is a process. I believe it is not quite closed. I think it is closed to the public at this point. I think that closed on the 14th, but it's still, we're still getting input from the other organizations, etc. And then that will have to come back to council with a report, and we have to get feedback from the federal government if there are any concerns from various people before we can even determine whether we're going forward. So hopefully we'll hear something in early January about the grant money and whether or not we actually have the funds to do the project that we're looking to do.
Thank you. My recollection is that the condition of the runway is such that it needs to be repaired regardless of whether it is lengthened or not. Would that be correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
The initial, and the way it played out was we initially had a paving company come and look at the runway and give us a cost for repaving it and extending it. And then we applied for grant funding. We're approved for that. And then we had the engineering firm come and do a deeper assessment on it. And that's when they got into what does the base look like? And they found that there are places in the base that it's actually starting to give way. So there are actually holes starting to form in the concrete as well. So it is at a place where it needs to be redone. Whether or not it gets expanded, it has to be redone. There is a danger potentially if we don't do anything, it could actually be closed.
Good, thank you. I have been seeing some comments on social media and elsewhere, and I don't think that people fully understand the situation. So
I'll give you one comment. One of our counselors, Eric Scott, is a pilot, and he said he knows where to land and where to steer on the runway so he doesn't hit any. So kind of gives you an idea.
Yes, that fills one full of confidence. Director Hiltz.
Thanks, and maybe Director Seegers may be able to answer. Is there any role in the SCRD in this referral process, like letters of support? I don't know. Is there something that the SCRD should be doing in this application?
Just public comment. So if the regional district would like to comment about, benefits, or they don't like it, whatever. Yeah. It could be, it could go in. So that's why it came to the regional district.
Director Toth.
Thank you. I just wanted to add one consideration the regional district staff may give is any impact on the expansion on potential raw water reservoir sites uphill from this. Just offhand, I don't think it's a problem, but if staff have a deeper look at that and want to provide any feedback, that would be greatly appreciated too.
Thank you. Director Ties.
I just wanted to provide some general comments. Overall, I'm sort of two minds of the increased carbon emissions of putting an airport and having more flights going into new destinations. On the other hand, especially with the smaller and the short haul kind of stuff, it looks like other fuels, whether it be electric and that sort of thing, are sort of on the cusp, and I think there's some potential there. And then there's also, I think one of the big things, and probably the thing that will sway me towards supporting all of this, is certainly the use as an emergency access point. If our ferry terminal gets damaged in an earthquake or whatever, then we still have a way to get freight or food supplies and all that kind of stuff into the Sunshine Coast. So that's probably the biggest factor for me. And I think there's also some economic potential in having a functioning airport that's for more than just little Cessnas.
Thank you. I was also going to comment on the emergency aspect because we do run the emergency program for the coast. So that might be a place that the FCRD would want to weigh in. And that would be, I'd be interested to know what Mr. Trite had to say about that one. I'm not seeing any motions coming forward, so I'm inching towards the next agenda item, which is the communication from Minister Heyman about recycling regulation. I don't know if we have anything further to say on that. And if we don't, then I was going to move on to the item of new business, which I had suggested at one of our recent meetings. I raised the issue of the fact that utility invoices cannot be deferred. And we are getting to the point where between water and sewer and utility fees and frontage fees, some residents are looking at bills of $2,000, which is a lot. So I would like to move that we get a staff report that clarifies for us the differences between utility fees, frontage fees, and parcel taxes, and what options there could be for property owners to defer these. Do I have a seconder?
Well, sorry, I don't know if I can second that because it's probably rural.
Right. I have a seconder. Thank you. Director Toth.
Thank you. I actually had a question for it because it may change the motion that comes out of this, but because parcel taxes also apply to our water service, I think it is wider range than just the rural areas. But the question I had was with regards to, are you also wanting to look at whether there's changes that can be made within our local, the way we deliver these, tax these services, or advocacy efforts at a provincial level to change some regulations? Just a couple of other components that may want consideration or discussion.
Sure, but I don't know if we need to put it in the motion. But you're right. I think we need more options for residents on fixed incomes, particularly retirees. Director Seegers.
Thank you. I have heard that if utilities are not paid, I believe it's utilities are not paid, particularly in for people from the municipality, that they can then be added to the taxes and they can defer their taxes. So I'm not clear on, like you're saying, what can they do? Don't know.
That actually can't be done. I checked that, and no. GM Rosenboom.
Thank you. I consulted prior to this meeting briefly with our CFO, and we can definitely provide a report that outlines the current options and options for and what our limitations are in terms of regulatory framework, and where there might be some options to change the regulatory framework to allow for some more deferrals to occur. Currently unpaid utility bills are being transferred to the Surveyor General and are hence being put on parcel tax. However, that portion cannot be deferred because there is an interest. Actually, even the Surveyor General adds an interest component to that, so there's no deferral possible. So they will be deferred to parcel tax, but there's no deferral possible on that portion. But we can clarify that in a future report.
Great. Thank you very much. So, seeing no further discussion, I'm going to call the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? We voted rural areas, and if it turns out that it affects more, we'll get to it. Thank you very much. We are about to move in camera, so I'm going to ask for a motion that the public be excluded from attendance at the meeting in accordance with Section 91K of the Community Charter. That's good enough. Moved, seconded. Thank you. All those in favor? Thank you very much. Do we have any questions from our patient audience? of one. Ah, Mr. Jesperson, yay. You want to talk to us? Yay.
Holiday, and I am looking forward to a new slate of agenda, a new slate of meeting dates, which I haven't seen for the new year. I'm not sure when that'll be coming, but I'm sure it will be before we all need to know.
Yes, we've been getting them on our calendar updates. They just probably haven't made it onto the website yet.
It should be, yeah, it probably isn't on the website yet, but we did set dates at our last board meeting, I believe. Because we moved around, for example, infrastructure and planning, the time of the month, and yeah, so they the dates may not be on the website yet, Rick, but they if you look in last week's board meeting, they should be within there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. If that's it. Let's see. Ooh. Kicking Rick into the audience. It's nice to have this power. So we've been at this for a while, so I'm just going to suggest that we take a 4-minute break and resume in camera.
Dean, I love your hat. Where did you get that?